the dream that unlocks reality. Have you ever felt trapped? Trapped by your own anxieties, by the opinions of others, by the relentless pressure to plan, to achieve, to control every little piece of your life. What if I told you that the cage you feel is not real? What if the bars are just an illusion, a trick of the mind? And what if the key to unlocking that cage and experiencing a profound sense of freedom was hidden in a strange dream a Chinese philosopher had over 2,000 years ago? A dream about becoming a butterfly. The butterfly dream. Let us travel back in time. It is some 2,300 years ago in ancient China. A man named Zhuangzi, whom we now know as Zhuangzi, lies down to rest. As he drifts off, something remarkable happens. He begins to dream. In this dream, he was a butterfly. This is the crucial part. He was not a man thinking about being a butterfly, or a man watching a butterfly. In the dream, his entire consciousness, his very being, was that of a butterfly. He felt the delicate flutter of his own wings, a pair of vibrant, intricate marvels of nature. He drifted lazily on the warm afternoon breeze, feeling it lift and guide him without any effort at all. He would flit from one fragrant flower to another, drawn in by the vivid colors and the intoxicating sense of pollen. He was utterly, completely happy. It was a state of pure, thoughtless bliss. He was so entirely lost in the joy of being a butterfly that he had no memory, no awareness at all, of ever being a man named Zhuangzi. That identity had vanished. His entire world, his entire reality, was the warmth of the sun on his wings, the taste of nectar, and the gentle, aimless dance of flight. It was a perfect, uncomplicated existence. Then, just as suddenly as it began, he woke up, and there he was, solid, heavy, and unmistakably human, lying there in his bed. He was Zhuangzi once more. But waking up did not bring the usual sense of clarity. It did not bring relief. It brought a question, a single, profound question that would shake him to his very core and echo through the halls of philosophy for centuries. The dream had felt so complete, so absolutely, 100% real, that now, fully awake, he could not be sure of anything. He asked himself this: was I Zhuangzi, who just dreamed he was a butterfly? Or am I now a butterfly, dreaming that I am Zhuangzi? Now, take a moment with that. This is not just a quaint old fable. It is not a clever riddle with a secret punchline you are supposed to figure out. It is a doorway. Zhuangzi is not just asking about dreams. He is prying open the lid on everything we take for granted. He is poking at the very nature of identity, of consciousness, of what we call real. How can you be so utterly sure that this reality, the one you are in right now, listening to these words, is the real one? Crazy it might sound, but that question and the philosophy it unfolds holds a key to dismantling your biggest fears and completely changing how you see yourself, your life, and your place in the universe. Meet Zhuangzi, the man who chose mud over power. To truly grasp the depth of this butterfly dream, you have to understand the man who dreamed it and the world he lived in. So let us head back to 4th century BCE China. This was an era of profound chaos and conflict, famously known as the Warring States period. For over 200 years, different states and kingdoms were locked in a near-constant struggle for power. It was a time of brutal warfare, political instability, and immense suffering for ordinary people. But this very chaos also created an incredibly fertile ground for new ideas. It was a time of incredible intellectual and spiritual growth. When the world is breaking, people start asking big questions. How should we live? What is a good society? What is the way back to harmony? Thinkers, teachers, and philosophers, now known as the 100 schools of thought, roamed the land, each offering a different Tao, a different way to fix a broken world. The most famous and influential of these were the Confucians. They were the architects of order. They believed the answer to the chaos was a return to social hierarchy, strict family values, detailed rituals, and a clear, rigid moral code. For them, the way was about duty, propriety, and everyone knowing their proper place. Then you had the Mohists, who were deeply practical thinkers. They preached a kind of rational, universal love, arguing that the best path was to do what brings the most benefit to the greatest number of people. And then there was Zhuangzi. He was a universe unto himself. He was not the kind of philosopher you might picture, some stuffy, serious academic scribbling away in an ivory tower. He was a brilliant, witty, and deeply unconventional thinker. We know he held a minor official post at one point, but famously turned down a major promotion from a powerful king. The king's messengers offered him the position of prime minister, a role of immense power and wealth. Zhuangzi is said to have replied by asking them if they had ever seen a sacrificial ox, fattened up and adorned with ribbons, only to be led to the slaughter. He told them he would much rather be a turtle dragging its tail in the mud than a sacred ox in a king's palace. He valued his freedom, his simple, muddy freedom, way more than power or prestige. He was a Daoist, but his style was entirely his own. He did not write down a set of rules or commandments. He did not give formal lectures. He told stories, wild, imaginative, often hilarious stories. He did not offer a 5-step plan to happiness. He offered paradoxes and questions that would take apart the very mind that was looking for such a plan in the first place. The forgotten genius of Daoist philosophy. In the world of Daoist philosophy, you often hear the name Laozi. He is credited with writing the famous Tao Te Ching, a book that has become a household name in philosophy and spirituality sections of bookstores worldwide. The Tao Te Ching is poetic, mysterious, and concise. It is filled with cryptic verses that feel like ancient wisdom whispered from a mountaintop. It is beautiful, and its fame is well deserved. But then there is the book that bears Zhuangzi's name, the Zhuangzi, and reading it is a completely different experience. It is not a whisper. It is a carnival. It is a wild ride of sprawling fables, talking trees, giant birds, philosophical arguments between skeletons, and razor-sharp humor. And this, perhaps, is why Zhuangzi is sometimes underrated or misunderstood. You cannot boil his philosophy down into a neat little list of rules or easily digestible inspirational quotes. People often see him as a great storyteller, a literary figure, a master of fantasy, and he was. But to stop, there is to miss the radical, world-changing core of his message. He is not just telling fables for entertainment. He is using them as precision tools. Tools designed to dismantle the very anxieties that define modern life. In our world, a world obsessed with certainty, with productivity, with crafting the perfect identity, and with controlling every last detail of our lives, Zhuangzi's playful, profound skepticism is not just relevant. It is the antidote we desperately need. He is inviting us to question everything we believe is solid, starting with the most fundamental thing of all, our sense of you. The great illusion. Why control is a trap. So much of our modern anxiety, stress, and burnout comes from one gigantic fundamental mistake, the belief that we can and should control everything. We make meticulous 5-year plans for our careers. We schedule every hour of our day in productivity apps. We try to manage how everyone sees us, carefully curating our lives on social media. We work tirelessly to control our finances, our relationships, and our health. And when life, as it always does, refuses to follow our script, when a pandemic hits, when we lose a job, when a relationship ends, when we get sick, we feel frustrated, anxious, and like we have failed. Zhuangzi saw this desperate grasping for control as the very root of human misery. For him, trying to force your will on the natural flow of things is like trying to carve a beautiful sculpture by hacking away against the grain of the wood. It is utterly exhausting. It rarely works the way you want, and you end up damaging the very thing you are trying to shape. From Zhuangzi's perspective, the universe is not a museum of static, separate, labeled objects. It is a single, non-stop, dynamic process of transformation. He called this process the Tao, or the Way. Everything is in constant flowing motion. A seed becomes a sprout becomes a tree becomes firewood becomes ash becomes soil. From this viewpoint, Zhuangzi and butterfly are not two separate, fixed beings. They are just temporary patterns in this universal flow. Life and death, sleeping and waking, success and failure. These are not opposites fighting each other. They are just different phases of the same continuous cosmic river. True freedom, he argued, does not come from gaining more control. It does not come from building a better plan or a stronger fortress around your life. It comes from the profound, liberating release of letting go of the idea that you were ever in control in the first place. Wu Wei, the Art of Effortless Action. If letting go of the illusion of control is the goal, how do you actually live that way? Does it mean you just give up, lie on the couch, and let the world happen to you? The answer lies in one of Taoism's most vital and most misunderstood ideas, Wu Wei. Wu Wei is very often translated as non-action, which, in our productivity-obsessed culture, makes it sound like pure laziness or apathy. But that is a huge and damaging misreading. Wu Wei does not mean doing nothing at all. It means effortless action, or spontaneous, natural action. It is the art of acting without straining, of moving with the natural currents of a situation instead of fighting against them. Think of a skilled surfer on a huge, powerful wave. She is not controlling the ocean. That would be insane. The power she is riding is immense, far beyond her own. She is not fighting the wave's power. That would be pointless and would get her crushed. Instead, she has become a master student of the water. Through practice and deep attention, she feels its subtle movements, its shifts in energy, its rhythm. She adjusts her balance, her position, her posture to move in perfect harmony with its immense energy. She is intensely active, using all her skill and focus, but her actions are so perfectly in tune with the flow of the wave that they look graceful, beautiful, even effortless. That is Wu Wei. It is a dynamic response, not a rigid command. Or think of a master gardener. A novice gardener might try to force things. They plant things in the wrong soil, at the wrong time of year, and then wage a constant, frustrating war against pests and weeds. The master gardener, practicing Wu Wei, first studies the land. They understand the soil, the sunlight, the natural cycles of the seasons. They work with these conditions, not against them. Their action is gentle, responsive, and incredibly effective. Wu Wei is about moving through life like the surfer or the gardener, with deep attunement, skill, and a willingness to yield to a power greater than your own ego. How to escape the prison of opinions. Zhuangzi had a keen eye for how people become prisoners. Not prisoners in a jail cell, but prisoners of opinion, both their own and those of others. He saw how people become puppets to what others think, puffed up by a single compliment and completely crushed by a minor criticism. He argued that we each get trapped inside our own little wells of experience. Think about it. Your perspective is shaped by your family, your culture, your education, your language, your personal history. It is like you are sitting at the bottom of a deep well, looking up at a small patch of sky. And from your well, that patch is the entire universe. Based on this tiny, limited slice of reality, we form incredibly strong, rigid opinions about what is right and wrong, good and bad, possible and impossible. And then we spend our lives arguing with, judging, and condemning other people who are just sitting at the bottom of their own wells, looking at a different patch of sky. For Zhuangzi, real wisdom is not about collecting more facts to prove that your well has the best view. It is not about having the right opinion. It is about realizing that every opinion, by its very nature, is partial and limited. It is having the deep intellectual and spiritual humility to say, this is how it looks from where I am standing, but I know, for a fact, that there are countless other ways to see it. Freedom, then, becomes a matter of perspective. When you can mentally step outside of your own narrow viewpoint, even for a moment, you are no longer its prisoner. The judgments of others lose their sting because you see that their praise and blame are just reflections of their well, not some absolute truth about you. The Daoist sage in Zhuangzi stories has forgotten the self that can even be praised or blamed. They do not act to win approval or avoid disapproval. They act from a place of inner spontaneity, from that place of Wu Wei, in tune with the way. Ancient Fables for Inner Strength. Zhuangzi did not lay out these ideas in a dry academic thesis. He embedded them in unforgettable stories. 1. The Cook and the Ox. This is perhaps the most perfect illustration of Wu Wei. A lord named Wen Hui is watching his personal cook, a man named Ding, butcher an ox. The lord is absolutely mesmerized. Cook Ding's knife does not hack or chop. It moves with the fluid grace of a dancer. Every touch, every slice, every slide of the blade seems to be part of a beautiful, effortless rhythm. The sound it makes is a gentle swish, and the ox carcass seems to fall apart on its own. The Lord cries out, "Incredible! How can skill possibly reach such a level?" Cook Ding puts down his knife and explains, "What I care about," he says, "is the way, which goes far beyond mere skill. When I first started cutting up oxen, all I saw was the ox, a big, solid, intimidating mass. After 3 years of practice, I no longer saw the ox as a whole. I saw the parts. And now," he continues, "I approach it with my spirit and do not look with my eyes. My senses stop and my spirit takes over." He explains that he follows the natural structure of the ox. He guides his knife through the big gaps and openings, following the natural contours. He never even tries to cut through the smallest ligament or tendon, let alone a major bone. This is why, he says, after 19 years of use, his knife is still as sharp as the day it was first sharpened. A good cook changes his knife once a year because he cuts. A bad cook needs a new knife every month because he hacks at bone. Cook Ding perceives the ox's underlying structure, its Tao, and simply moves his knife through the empty spaces. He does not impose his will. He joins the flow. 2. The Big Fish and the Small Frog. In the Northern Ocean, a place of deep, dark mystery, lives a giant fish named Kun. This fish is unimaginably vast, thousands of miles long. One day, This great fish transforms into an even greater bird named Peng, whose wings, when they spread, are like clouds covering the entire sky. With a mighty beat of its wings, this great bird rises 90,000 leagues into the air to begin a great migration to the Southern Ocean. But down below, in the reeds and bushes, a little cicada and a dove hear about this and laugh. "Come on," they chirp to each other. "That is ridiculous. We do our absolute best just to fly with all our might up to that next elm tree, and sometimes we do not even make it. What is this bird thinking, trying to go 90,000 leagues south?" From their point of view, they are not wrong. Their entire reality, their understanding of what flight is defined by the distance between branches. Their perspective is radically, hopelessly limited. They mistake the edge of their own small experience for the edge of the entire universe. Zhuangzi uses this story to show how we so often mock what we cannot comprehend, dismissing grand ideas or vast perspectives simply because they do not fit into our tiny well. 3. The basin story. Perhaps our biggest fear, the one that shapes so much of our struggle for control, is the fear of death. When Zhuangzi's own wife died, his friend Hui Shi, a fellow philosopher, went to his home to offer condolences. He expected to find Zhuangzi weeping, lost in grief. Instead, he found a shocking scene. Zhuangzi was squatting on the ground, banging on an overturned pot like a drum, and singing loudly. His friend was horrified and admonished him. To live with someone, to raise children, to grow old together, and then not to mourn her death, that is bad enough. But to be pounding on a tub and singing, is that not going too far? Zhuangzi replied calmly, "You are mistaken. When she first died, do you think I was not sad? Of course I was. I felt the loss just like anyone would. But then I stopped and I looked back. I looked back to her very beginning, to the time before she was even born. Before that, to the time before she had a body. And before that, to the time before she even had vital energy or ki. In that great swirling mystery of the universe, there was a transformation, and she received energy. That energy transformed, and she received a body. That body transformed, and she was born. Now there has been another transformation, and she has died. The whole thing is just like the turning of the 4 seasons: spring, summer, fall, winter. It is all one process. She is now resting peacefully in the great chamber of the universe. If I were to run around sobbing and wailing, it would just mean I do not understand how destiny, how the way, works. So I stopped. 5 ways to use ancient wisdom in modern life. So how do we take these ancient, mind-bending stories and use them in our 21st century lives, filled with smartphones, deadlines, and social media? Zhuangzi's wisdom is not an abstract theory. It is a practical guide to living with a lighter touch and a more resilient spirit. First, ease your grip on the future. Take an honest look at your life. Where are you trying to force things? That promotion at work, you are white-knuckling. That relationship, you are trying to steer in one exact direction. Your diet and exercise plan that has become a source of stress instead of health. Shift your focus from desperately controlling the final result to skillfully and gracefully engaging with the process. Like Cook Ding, look for the natural grain of the situation. Adapt, respond, and move through the empty spaces instead of hacking at the bones. Second, treat uncertainty as a feature, not a bug. Our world teaches us to fear the unknown. When you feel that familiar anxiety of not knowing what is next in your career, your health, your world, remember the butterfly dream. Gently remind yourself that you are not a fixed, solid statue. You are a process of transformation. Am I a man dreaming I am a butterfly, or a butterfly dreaming I am a man? The point is not the answer. It is the question. Seeing your identity as fluid and flowing rather than brittle and fixed makes you incredibly resilient to life's changes. Third, find your Wu Wei. Find an activity in your life where you can get lost in a flow state, doing it purely for its own sake, not for a result or for praise. For some, it is painting or coding or playing an instrument. For others, it is hiking or gardening or even organizing a closet. Notice that feeling when your inner critic gets quiet, when time seems to disappear, and your actions feel effortless and spontaneous. That is the feeling of Wu Wei. The more you visit that state, the more you can learn to bring that quality of effortless, attuned action into the other, more stressful parts of your life. Fourth, become a curious observer of your own mind. The next time someone praises you or criticizes you, try this experiment. Do not immediately identify with it. I am a success or I am a failure. Instead, just watch what happens inside you. Observe the feeling of pride or the sting of shame as if you were watching a weather pattern passing through. Notice it arise, notice its quality, and notice it eventually fade away. These opinions, these feelings, they are not you. You are the vast, silent awareness in which they appear and disappear. Finally, deliberately stretch your perspective. Make it a regular habit to peek out of your, read a book by someone you think you disagree with, not to argue in your head, but to genuinely try and understand their point of view. Genuinely listen to someone with a vastly different life, experience without trying to judge or fix them. Travel, learn a new skill. Every time you intentionally break a familiar pattern, you remind yourself that your version of reality is not the only one, and it certainly is not the complete one. The paradox of power. How to win by letting go. We started with a man who dreamed he was a butterfly and woke up unsure of who he truly was. That strange little story is a key that unlocks a profoundly liberating philosophy. It teaches us that the solid, fixed self we cling to so desperately is a beautiful illusion, and that our true nature is transformation itself. It shows us that the frantic, exhausting fight for control is the primary source of our suffering, and that real mastery, real power, lies in the grace of effortless action. Zhuangzi's butterfly dream is not a puzzle to be solved. There is no right answer. In fact, the whole point of the story is to dissolve the part of your mind that needs one single, fixed answer for everything. It is an invitation to live in that open space of creative uncertainty and to find a deep, abiding joy in the mysterious, unpredictable, and constant flow of being. So the question to leave you with is this: what if, right now, you are the butterfly, dreaming you are you? If this idea has changed your perspective, let us know in the comments below. We would love to hear your thoughts. Please be sure to like this video if you found it valuable, share it with someone who might need this message, and subscribe to Thought 101 for more philosophy that changes the way you see life. Do not forget to hit the notification bell so you never miss an upload. Thank you, and see you in other videos.